I'm going to show you a crazy position played by Magnus Carlsen in this game, in which basically when I saw this position for the first time, I was like, what the hell just happened? So basically, Magnus places his queen along the attack line of a bishop, which gets the bishop in such a way that if you move the bishop, you lose your queen. And even if you do not move the bishop, your bishop is threatened and you might still lose your queen as well. It's really, really crazy position. It's very difficult to explain. I'll just show you that in the game. So Magnus is playing with the white pieces here, and he's playing with the Anderson opening, where he plays the a3 first, and which is basically a waiting move in which you see what the black is doing, and then plays according to that. And after that, both the players have been now looking to fianchetto their bishop and looking to castle on the king side. And as of the sixth move, black castles and Magnus castles as of the seventh move. So d6 by Pavel, who is playing with the black pieces, and which activates his bishop, and Magnus immediately pushes b4, looking to start the attack on the queen side with his pawns. And the knight now jumps because the pawn push was coming, and the knight could use that outpost on d4, and the knight to d4 is played, and the bishop to b2 by Magnus is played. He could have captured that knight, but he went for development immediately, placing the bishop on the diagonal against this black's dark bishop basically. So c6 by Pavel, looking to activate his queen, which was a little bit crammed on the king, because there is no escape on the king side because of his pawn pieces. And d3 by Magnus, and the rook comes to e8 now. The knight goes to d2, reorienting the knight, and the bishop comes to e6, and Magnus pushes e3, attacking the knight, and the knight retrieves to f5 now. So after that, the knight goes to e2. Magnus again reorients his other knight, and which basically covers these two outposts created by this pawn. Yes, the pawns are there, but you cannot push pawns if because of that basically. So the knight now protects it, and which allow Magnus to play e4, attacking the knight. The knight cannot come down here because it will be captured, and you'll create an isolated pawn. It's a pass pawn, but it'll be an isolated pawn basically, which requires support of the bishop and other pieces. So the knight now goes back to e7, and f4 is played by Magnus. So Magnus immediately goes out for a pawn attack on both the king and the queen side, and f5 is played by Pavel in response. And now Magnus moves his king to h1 because this queen can come here with create a check and can develop his queen with a tempo, and the king will be threatened. So Magnus didn't want to create any counterplay, and he moved his king. So Pavel also does the same, getting away from that semi-open light square diagonal, and the queen of Magnus goes to c2, and the queen of Pavel goes to c7, both the queens on the same c file, and the rook to e1 is played by Magnus, bringing both the rooks on this e and f file, which is going to get opened. And now a5 is played by Pavel. In the earlier position, it was better to play this a5 move, but he didn't play that, but he played a5 right now. So knight to f3 is played, looking to go into this outpost of g5, and to launch attack on the king. So after the pawn captures the pawn gets captures back, and the f pawn captures the e4 pawn, and the d pawn captures back. So here rook to f8 is played basically, but it was better to bring your rook here, pin the bishop here, and once when Magnus try to unpin it, you can bring your rook and double up the rook on this particular a file and create a battery of rook and launch your attack on through the queen side black. So, but rook f8 was played, he missed that opportunity, and c5 was played by Magnus, and after the pawn captures the pawn, the b pawn captures the pawn, and it's already attacked one. So now the rook comes to a5, attacking this pawn, which basically will fall, and there's not much any good way for this pawn to be supported. So after that, f pawn captures the e5 pawn, and the rook captures that pawn, and the queen had to move away to d2 basically. So the knight captures the e5 pawn. Now this is now where the game this crazy looking moves, origins of this crazy now captures the e5 pawn, which looks like hanging, and the knight captures the knight, and the bishop could capture the knight, but the rook first captures the rook, and with a check with a tempo, and after the rook captures back, the knight now captures the e5 pawn. And now Magnus plays this crazy move. He brings his queen to f4 here. So basically, what do you think about this move? I'll give you a few seconds to digest this move. So this is what Magnus plays. And here, if you capture this bishop, basically this bishop is without any support. So you can go ahead and capture this bishop if you want to with your bishop. But if you do that, your queen will be gone. Magnus queen will capture back your queen. And at the same time, this rook is also supporting this particular bishop, and this bishop is also attacking this bishop. And because of the presence of the rook here, it's not falling. If it fall with the bishop, the queen will be basically gone, basically, and maybe even after that the bishop will also fall. So this rook is also stuck here, and after that, after this particular move, bishop to c4 is played by Pavel. Actually, it's a huge mistake. That's what gave Magnus the advice. It was better to play knight to g8 in this position, because after knight to g8, the pin won't be that much active, and this because the rook will have to come to b1, and now once the bishop moves away, this queen can come here and create and unpin this. Basically, this pin is basically happening because of the presence of the queen here. Once the queen comes here, it gets unpinned basically, and this bishop will support that needs support. Okay, so so immediately Magnus had to move his queen, and he put his queen at f8 basically, if that would have happened. So so bishop to c4 was now played, and Magnus creates his second pin, and he brings his rook to c1 basically. This is another crazy move, because no, it basically creates a deflection, because you can capture this particular bishop now, and here basically, if you capture this bishop, you cannot capture back, because this bishop will fall, and with that your queen will also fall basically. So, and here instead of rook to c1, Magnus could have placed this check, and after the knight closes, he could have just captured this rook as well. There was this possibility as well. Yes, this bishop will fall, and but you will get that bishop in exchange, and Magnus will be up by a rook in an endgame basically. But he didn't go for that. He wanted to keep the pressure on this position, and he brought his rook to c1, which basically pins this particular bishop, and he cannot go and capture this particular knight here. If you capture it, the rook will come here, and definitely now this bishop will fall. Okay, so now the pawn to push to b6 supports the rook, but Magnus goes and captures that bishop, and the rook cannot capture back, so the queen comes to d6 here. So Magnus now goes ahead and captures that particular rook, and Pavel comes in and creates a check, and Magnus now closes with his queen, because now and after that you are forced to either retrieve the queen, or you have to go for the queen exchange. I'll go for the queen exchange, and after that this bishop is taken back, and the rook comes down to d7. So if you do not take back this bishop, a check will happen like this, and you lose the bishop as well. So the so that bishop was taken by the black bishop, and the rook comes down attacking that bishop. And actually from this position the game basically ended, and black resigned the position, resigned the game. And so crazy move by Magnus, and this position we have to remember such positions. And there was another similar game, not similar, but it was a pin brilliance by Bobby Fischer. We have already made a video about that in our channel, so if you want to see that, you could watch, because it's another kind of brilliant kind of pin, and there's a back rank check available for Fischer, and it doesn't work. I have never seen such a position as well, but this position is quite similar displayed by Magnus. So I hope you liked the video. We'll be back with more such good videos. Thank you very much for watching.